Welcome to the Eddie Lamb Show. We dedicate this podcast to interviewing musicians of every kind, as well as online content creators on social media. Whether if they're starting out or if they're already on the rise and still growing, this show is all about having a fun conversation with our guests, talking about their favorite things that relate to their passion for their projects. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's have that conversation. Writing catchy songs with catchy riffs can be time-consuming, as it takes a lot of patience. Our guest is no stranger to songwriting, as he's been displaying such skill since he was in elementary school at a very young age. His name is Drew Storey. Drew has done many solo gigs, but he's been expanding his horizons, playing with a full band, advancing his songs to a whole new level at various gigs, including local community events in the lower mainland of Vancouver BC. We'll be chatting about Drew's songwriting styles, our mutual music mentor, and even our common love for buying physical media for albums. Okay, folks, in the studio we have another local singer-songwriter who writes really catchy stuff. He is from Langley, BC, which is not too far from Vancouver, probably like about a 40-minute drive. He has written some really cool, catchy stuff that will get stuck on your head for quite some time. And I got the pleasure of meeting him in person for the first time, seeing his amazing band play out in the Fort Langley area for the Fort Langley Night Market on a Friday night. And we had a blast. My wife and I enjoyed it so much, and we got a chance to see that whole band rock it out. And on top of that, we've learned something so cool. This guy is also one of my original followers back when I started my TikTok a few years ago during the pandemic. And it's such a pleasure to meet this gentleman now who has written some really cool songs. And we've also played at open mics together, all that good stuff. So without further ado, guys, this is Mr. Drew Storey. Welcome to the show, Drew. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So, Drew, we got to talk about all these cool things. You know, you've released a bunch of great music on Spotify, and I've got a chance to listen to them in my car while driving. And they're all super catchy. And you know what was really fascinating is that you even launched some songs that you wrote when you were just a kid.
Yeah, I've been doing this since 2015. So I would have been, oh my goodness, like 10 years old when that first song came out. And
Right.
I've been releasing pretty much a song a year, or maybe two songs, most of the time one song since then, which is pretty crazy.
That's fascinating. I was just so impressed that you could write something even so catchy like the song about California when you were just only 10 years old, right? Because I always keep thinking to myself, 10-year-old me was just way too goofy, like I wouldn't be able to get myself disciplined to write something so cool and structured like that. But let's talk about your history here. So, when did you start playing music?
I would say the first time, I think, as most musicians would say, that they always loved and were involved with music and making sounds ever since they were a little kid. Like, there's tons of pictures of me in the kitchen with like upside down pots and pans and using the forks and knives as drumsticks, even though I'm terrible with drums. But yeah, I was a huge music fan my whole life, and I was always singing nonsense around the house. But when I was about 8 or 9, my older sister, who's 2 years older than me, was taking some vocal lessons. And I happened to be sitting there with my mom one time waiting for her to get picked up. And I think I said something like, "Mom, I suck at all the sports you guys have put me in. Please let me try this thing." And so I was signed up pretty quickly for that. And those lessons, and shout out to Song of Stars. It's a Vancouver-based vocal and really all types of instruments studio for kids. And they had a Langley location, and me and my sister were one of the first students in the Langley location.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and that goes way back to like 2014.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that company, I guess. I recently, after coming back from college, got to catch up with my old teacher, and it was super cool. But I went there until I was maybe 16.
Wow.
Yeah, so maybe about 8 or 9 to 16.
Yeah.
And so all those songs that you hear up until about 2019 were all somewhat written at that school. I would write them, some of them with my teacher, some of them I would just, especially the younger ones, because I wasn't playing piano on those early tracks. And then as I got older, I just got more and more involved in the process of, I realized that, I love singing and I love playing instruments, but my core thing is that I just love making songs. I find that a lot of people ask me, well, why did you start writing music so young? It's as simple as I had random melodies that I would hum, and I would kind of try and, I think it started as I would try and find those songs. I would be like, what is this song? What is the name of this song? And somebody would be like, well, that's not, I've never heard that. And I'd be like, okay, but I need to listen to this song. I love this song. I want to put it on. So I ended up making it. Someday I may get sued. Someday we might find the songs that inspired 8-year-old me. Because I still haven't found them, but I believe that they're somewhat original. And I really wanted to just make the music that for some reason at the time came naturally to me, and I really like those melodies and stuff like that.
That's awesome. I mean, it's so fascinating how you say that too, because like I feel like a lot of songwriting does come from inspiration from somewhere else in general, anyways, right?
Yeah.
Regardless, if you might get in trouble or not.
No, I was just playing. I can't actually find any songs. I just meant as a kid, maybe listening to something on the radio, something would get, you never know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I can't recall a specific song.
No, for sure. So speaking of songs that you've heard on the radio or wherever else it may be, what was the first album you've ever bought?
Oh, that I bought. So what's crazy is I want to say, okay, I had an iPad at a very young age.
Yeah.
And I'm not an iPad kid, I swear. Not that young of an age. But when I was maybe 11 or 12, we were going on a family trip, and I was like listening to Adele, believe it or not.
No kidding.
The record that had the song, do you know the song When We Were Young?
Yeah.
By Adele?
Yes.
I loved that. I was like, let me photograph you in this light. I was addicted to that song. I don't know if 11 or 12 is accurate to when that came out, but at that time I loved that song. And I begged my dad to buy it, the whole album on iTunes for the trip so that I could listen to it on the plane.
Yeah.
That's the first one I remember buying. A physical record would probably be a Rex Orange County vinyl.
Have you ever noticed a difference of the quality when you play, say, a digital release song and a vinyl record?
Yes. I totally understand where people are coming from. When people say, oh, it's so much better on vinyl, I think that there's something so charming about the sound. I think that some people who grow up with electronic, very hi-fi sounding digital stuff might not be into the older stuff. I happen to be into a lot of music from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And so when you listen to that digitally anyways, it was ripped right off the vinyl. And so it sounds a lot like what happens when you play modern pop music off of a record player, right? You get a bit of that more mid-boost, warmer sound.
That's right,
And so I'm nostalgic for that sound anyways, so I like it a lot. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily one of the snobs that's like, I will only listen on... the only vinyls that I have I've either inherited or they're my favorite albums, and I just want to have the physical thing because it just means something to me.
Exactly. And that's the thing, too. Like, I know that people say, these days it's more about the digital release, but I feel like what you and I share that common bond about is the fact that when you go to any record shop, like the late great HMV, or I guess now it's Sunrise Records here in BC. But regardless, when you buy either even just a CD or the vinyl and all that, you appreciate all the stuff that goes behind it, the artwork, right?
Absolutely.
The lyrics printed we'll say for CDs, the lyrics printed in the pages.
Yeah, the jacket,
right? And then also not only that, the credits. You want to see who produced it.
Thank you for saying that, because for me, I'm, especially as someone who's getting older and choosing more who I collaborate with, I'm always so curious, actually, even more than just production. Who wrote on this? Who co-wrote on this?
Yes.
Because I know the artist wrote on it. Maybe they didn't, but most of the time they did. Who are the other 2 or 3 writers who were in the room? Because I want to follow, now that we're in the digital age, it's as easy as going on Instagram and looking up that person's name and checking out, well, what other stuff is that writer working on? Because I'm probably going to end up loving it. That's the truth. And yeah, I think that there's something so cool. Like, yeah, you could open the credits on Spotify. Most of the time, they're not accurate. They don't have all the names.
No, and even sometimes Wikipedia, it may not always be accurate, but that's why, like, even then, for me, this is going to date myself a lot here, but like, before I even had the internet, I would just look at this the CD pages, the CD pages, right, and look at the credits and see, it confirms who produced this, who guest starred on it, if there was a special guest on it, and even some other things that was probably not mentioned in the title. But let's say you flip through the pages and you're like, lead guitar by, let's say, Eddie Van Halen, right? And of course, like when Michael Jackson advertised "Beat It," on the record, it doesn't say featuring Eddie Van Halen. But then if you look deeper, you'll probably see it somewhere, right? But then it's like, oh, well, this confirms everything. Well, this is all the accurate information you need. And because I don't know, it's just something about it where it's like, once it's published, everything on there is the official information that you need.
Yeah, I love that you think about it that way, because I genuinely have always, there's this weird connection of feeling like, other than being in the room the day it was recorded, that's the closest you're going to get, is right there on that paper. And in many ways, it's so dorky, nerdy, whatever, but I sit there and I'll almost picture sometimes with my favorite records what everybody sitting in the studio was kind of looking like when they were recording it and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
When you can look up the pictures of the people of these names of, blah, 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 played drums, blah, 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 played guitar, blah, 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 played bass. You can picture everybody in the room together working on these tracks, especially when things were recorded live off the floor.
Yeah.
That's even cooler.
Yeah. And this is the thing that I had other guests and I talk about too from other episodes here. We had a few different guests that mentioned how live off the floor recording is such, like, you'll feel the difference. Like, the vibe for that is so different compared to, let's say, modern music that is very processed. Now, there's anything wrong with it to a certain extent, but it's just that it's nice to mix things up a little bit sometimes, where you don't have to worry about the click track. You don't have to worry about the auto-tune. You don't have to worry about all that stuff. Like I went and guessed Deshaun Jones. He manages this one artist who did live off the floor recording where they put a mic to his vocals, to his guitar, and one on the floor so he can tap his feet.
That's cool.
And
mix that in lightly.
Yeah, exactly, right. So that kind of sound, right? And I thought this is so cool. And like back then, I guess Mississippi blues style music was recorded like that, right? But going back to what you were saying though, so the Adele record you mentioned. What's the one thing you really enjoy so much about Adele's vocal ability?
Oh, I think that there's something. I mean, it's such an oversimplification. I would really have to think about it for a long time. But my instinct right away when you ask me that question is probably actually her emotional inflection in the lyrics. And it's the more I work in a studio and the more I do a million takes on my own work, it's like there is so much art in you sit in the studio all day comping vocal, if you're not doing it live off the floor, comping vocals and doing it over and over and over again. You start to lose sight of the emotional integrity of the piece you're performing because you've done it 100 times that day. I'm sure she does it 100 million times to get the perfect take, and yet I still believe every word that she says on her records. Because there's sometimes some of my favorite like R&B artists are really strong at that too. Is like there's sometimes where it almost sounds like they're about to start crying when they say certain things. And it gets you, no matter if you're happy listening to it or you start off sad listening to it, you're gonna feel that.
Great answer. And that's the thing too, because when you think about Adele, I mean, there's something about her singing that really stands out, right? she became so well known, like in the in the early mid 2010s, right?
Yeah.
And then when Rolling in the Deep came out, that was like the big hit,
Yeah, the
that
breaking
we've heard
point for her.
religiously. But I mean, I know that's the one thing, because it got so overplayed to the point where I was like, oh man, we heard this a million times, right?
Yeah.
Let's hear something else from her. Have you ever seen her live before?
I have not seen her live. It's interesting that you say that, though, about it being overplayed. I actually find her career super interesting. I don't know a ton, I'll be honest, but
Yeah,
the fact that she drops these absolutely gorgeous records and then disappears for like 5, 6, 7 years.
that's right. Yeah,
And then comes. It's kind of like Bruno Mars, I've noticed.
Yeah,
seems to do that.
that's
It's like
true. Yeah.
they're only dropping quality over quantity. I'm sure
Yeah.
that during those 5 to 7 years, I'm sure both her and Bruno Mars are recording like crazy.
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
just vaulting so much stuff.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. But
Yeah.
I have not seen her live. I would love to see her live. I think that that's especially one of those artists where it's like that vocal would just fill the whole room.
That's right. Yeah. What about Bruno Mars? Have you ever seen him live, or would you ever see him live?
I have seen him live.
So,
I'm a huge fan.
which one was this?
His 24 Karat Magic Tour at Rogers Arena.
Oh, that one. Okay, yeah.
I was there with my dad and my stepsister, my stepmom, and my sister, and we were all there. We were like, the side stage seats where like you can see the people, but they're tiny little ants, and you're trying to look at the screen, but you're at the side of the set. Like,
Right, yeah,
oh man,
yeah.
it's a good thing he has an awesome band that dances the whole time.
Oh, that's amazing.
Because
yeah.
we had terrible seats.
Oh man.
But he sounded great. I think that there's something so charming about, I would call it, I'm sure there's people who did it long before him, but I would call it the Michael Jackson style pop star, where it's this person, I guess you could credit it to an Elvis type figure as well prior to Michael Jackson, but a person who can sing, dance, and truly perform. It's almost like a triple threat in musical theater. That type of
exactly
thing.
that. Yeah.
I find that's so charming. Like the idea of a true pop star almost being superhero status, and like they are doing not just the music to the top caliber, but the whole show. I find that like that blows my mind.
I think a lot of the influences from someone like Bruno Mars, or any other pop stars like Michael Jackson, right? Like it's so fascinating because it's true. We see someone like Elvis Presley, just like, not only singing, but he's dancing around, right? Got all these, backup singers, the big band and all that, right? And then he has to like switch to playing instruments and singing too, right? But seeing how multi-talented these artists are, it's just so, it just blows your mind. Now, at the same time, because I was watching these documentaries recently about all those famous boy bands in the 90s as well. So you talk in early 2000s. So you talk about like Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, all those folks, right? They took it to that level too, where they're not just singing, they're doing these choreographed dance moves where they're jumping around like ninjas, like flipping around and everything like that. And yet they're all, they're singing too, right? So it's like break dancing, singing, and it's just, it's a workout for them. I can only imagine.
Yeah, I actually think about that all the time. I'm a huge boy band fan, which is like something I don't really talk about. I feel like a lot of people, actually, if you listen to my music, a lot of people, my friends joke around. They're like, "Oh, it reminds me a lot of like Disney Channel music, like the type of music that would come out of like a boy band or something like that."
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I adore that music, and a hill that I will die on is I can't stand when people give boy bands a hard time for being cheesy. Some of the marketing is cheesy, but the work that they are doing, between the vocal harmony and the moves that they're doing on stage, I think it's one of the most incredible things in the world.
Yeah, well, it's so funny how you say that too, because I remember like growing up, like being 18, to my early 20s, I was only like just into metal, so anything that was not metal was considered bad music, right? So I was unfortunately one of those snobby genre supremacy kind of guys, right? But then as I got older, when I see how much work goes behind the scenes, when I start watching these documentaries, right? And I'm just like, you know what? I have a lot more respect for these performers. They're not just artists; they're also performers who do well at what they do, and And just saying, and even just a few years back when I was watching these documentaries about how the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC they got ripped off by their now deceased manager Lou Pearlman, who ripped them off big time, right? And just seeing how much they went through, I'm like, I have a huge amount of respect. The fact that they had to put up with so much of that, garbage experience in their beginning stages, and now it's a complete different ball game for them. Now they have full control of everything, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's just saying that like it makes me respect what how they are as artists, right? But now I and that's the thing too. For me being older as well, I could be like, well, you know what? If something's not my cup of tea, I'm not gonna bash it and say, oh, this is stupid. I'll just say, you know what? It's not my cup of tea, but I can see why people enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm honestly coming to that too, and it took me a while. I would kind of just listen to what I would listen to, and anybody would send me recommendations, and I was like, man, I don't want to listen. But now I'm definitely like, the thing that I often say is like, I'm not really into that, but I can acknowledge that for what that is, those people are really good at that. And
That's
so
right.
the people who like that are going to love that,
Yeah.
but I'm not one of those people necessarily.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Speaking of our favorite artists, so with you being a guitar player, has there been any major artists that you've admired so much who inspire you to play guitar?
Yeah, so it's super interesting because when I was younger, I took a little bit of piano lessons, and because I was just trying to figure out an instrument to write with. I had melodies and I messed around with stuff, but I really wanted to be able to accompany myself. So I started with piano.
That's right.
And for whatever reason, I would say I probably just had like a very like strict classical type teacher in the beginning, and it kind of killed my joy. And so many people tell these stories of the way that music being taught, knocking them down at the early age, and then they never touch it again. I'm very lucky that my parents were like, okay, then try a different instrument. Because I know a couple of people who were like, oh, I didn't have a good experience with learning music when I was young, and now I just don't do it. And I think that's a shame. But for me, it wasn't actually seeing anyone specifically play guitar at first that made me want to do it. It was more just I wanted to accompany myself. I thought the guitar looked cool.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
In general, but as I got older, I know I've already mentioned his name. I thought that Rex Orange County and a lot of those indie pop artists that use some, I guess, kind of jazz-esque chords, but it's like singer-songwriter structure where it's like very simple comping or maybe finger-picking style, but you're playing, I almost want to say like Beatles-esque chord progressions where it's like it's singer-songwriter, but it takes you somewhere a little unexpected. And so I guess that style of guitar playing, which arguably is really simple guitar playing, chord progression wise, and and writing, it's a little bit more complex.
That's
but
right. Yeah,
it's really simple. Now, literally within the last year, and I'm about to drop a name that nobody's probably gonna know, but there's an artist called Ben Goldsmith. And
I've heard the name.
Yeah,
Yes.
probably because I spam about him every day. But honestly, my account's becoming a fan account. But he's a very, very, I would consider like the John Mayer type archetype. Where and I'm a John Mayer fan, but I was never like crazy about John Mayer. Like I liked him, and I do, but he was never like one of my number ones. But Ben Goldsmith is like a pop singer-songwriter who's incredible, but his knowledge in blues guitar riffs and stuff like that, like on a lead end, is just insane. And it's really, it shook me to my core. I was like, after seeing him live, I was like, I don't think I'm going to touch that instrument again. After maybe a week of moping, I got up and started practicing my scales and stuff like that. And I think that talking about archetypes, we talked about the Michael Jackson type people who run around on stage and jump and flip and sing super high. Then there's the people who are great vocalists, songwriters, and also instrument virtuosos.
Yeah.
Both of those, I really hope that I can find the best of both of those things as I grow up and find those showy elements from the Michael Jackson type people, as well as the virtuosity of those like instrument masters. I think on the keyboard, I think of like Stevie Wonder, for example.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like absolutely just like there's no fighting with the instrument. It's a connection between the person and the instrument, and getting to a level where you're not thinking about what you're playing. You're just essentially talking through the instrument.
Yeah.
I think that's so beautiful. I'm nowhere near that. I forget my pentatonic scale every single day. So
Hey, so do I.
I'm nowhere near that. But
Yeah.
but I think that there's something. Sorry, this is such a roundabout answer to the question.
No. This is good. I actually like this.
Oh,
yeah.
oh, perfect.
Yeah.
I think that there's something so charming about both of those. I would actually put those two type of performers on a pretty far end. You usually get one or the other.
Yeah,
From what I
that's
see,
right.
you get the performer, or you get the more. Maybe it's performer versus artist. I wouldn't even say that because I think they're both artists.
Yeah.
I would say more performer versus more classic musician. Just so
Right.
trained in music. To
Yeah.
the point where like sometimes they'll just stand there, not even be looking at the audience, and just be shredding or like playing something super cool on the keys. Like,
Yeah.
and I think there's something so cool about both of those. When I talk to a lot of people, most people are either a fan of one or the other. I like both a lot.
Yeah, and you when you were talking about people who just shred on their instruments, like there was no tomorrow, it's funny how you mentioned that because I think about the legendary BB King,
Yeah.
the late great BB King. He sits down and plays for his show, but there's something about him that's just so enjoyable, even though he's just sitting, but you can still feel that high energy from him when he plays.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the fact that this guy is one of the best guitar players of all time, and seeing someone like him, like it's just like, well, yeah, if you're sitting down, you're not moving around, you're not dancing around, but you still captivate the audience, you still grab them for some reason. That's something to be said about that skill level.
Absolutely. I think that there's, if you can become that good at your instrument, you don't really need to develop your performance or charisma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If like then people are really just going for the music, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think of like someone who does fall in the middle that was legendary, Prince. I would say
Yes.
Prince is the true middle ground of showy pop performance man,
Yes.
but also insanely good at the instrument.
You are actually the second guest on the show to talk about Prince, actually.
Oh, there you
yeah.
go.
And that was the thing with Prince, is just that, man, like, this guy, he knows what he wants, right? And what I admire about him too is that, like he was able to do all the instruments himself.
Yeah.
Because it saves him time and money at the studio, right? And so it's like, yeah, don't worry, I'll take care of all these instruments. Does it, knocks it out of the park,
Insane.
right? And yeah, it's really insane. And but what I found so incredible about him is all those different styles that he could do, right? But of course, when you hear all these catchy bangers, right, like 1999, right, When Doves Cry, or Kiss, those were all big classics, right? Especially in the 80s, they just love that, everyone just loved that music to death. But fast forward, he even did a tour where he's playing the smaller venues, not the big stadiums. Like
Right.
when he came to Vancouver, he did the Vogue Theater of all places.
Wow.
And
Man, I have friends who have like
yeah,
played
well,
at those
that's
type
the
of
crazy
venues.
thing about it. But that's the one thing I do admire about Prince in that sense, is that, what, is because like I love being around with people. I want to be able to actually see them and talk to them, and just, say hi, right?
Right.
Because you can't do that at stadiums, right?
No.
When you're at the stadium, you got like a gajillion people screaming at your face, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's hard to concentrate too, right? But when you have like these smaller interactive shows, it's just like, wow. It's like as if he was still an artist that's just on his way to stardom.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, both being humble and just like a totally normal person. Like a normal person, but a normal person who worked so hard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Normal guy, but the talent is larger than life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned Prince. That's really cool.
Yeah. My mom's a huge fan. So
Oh, I bet.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
She'll end up listening to this.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of your family, so when I first saw you perform, right, you were playing at the Fort Langley night market out there, and I saw that you got family helping you with the merchandise and everything like that. Has your folks always helped you with all that stuff behind the scenes when you did your first show?
Yeah. Well, I'll be completely honest. that was probably my first really, really big thing. I had played at the Fort Langley Night Market as a solo. I do so much solo acoustic stuff. I'm sure you can relate to this.
Oh yeah, I've
like,
done that before
it's
too.
like
Yeah.
it's like 80% solo stuff because you got to pay the bills, and
Exactly.
it's fun. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but it's not where the heart's at, like the band stuff. We all love doing the band stuff.
Yeah, same here, yeah.
Yeah, for real. And it's harder to get those opportunities. It's hard to find good opportunities for a band. And so I'm very grateful that the Fort Langley Night Market team wanted to give me and my band a chance. And that was kind of the biggest thing. So that was kind of the first time that my family had helped in terms of merchandise. But of course, like, my family's been helping since day one.
That's awesome.
It's been, especially my mom.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing it right now. Like, I might seem pretty composed and collected in the way that I'm speaking right now, but I might go home right now and then just start crying and go, oh, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. You know, we all have those feelings some days.
Oh
where
yeah,
it's
the
like,
woes. Yeah, I've been through that too.
the imposter syndrome, all of it.
Yeah.
And my mom has been there for every single late night conversation. I love my dad as well. He's great for other things, but my mom has been the one who will literally go several sleepless nights just to make sure, not just that I'm okay, like as her kid, but the extra mile of knowing that it doesn't really matter exactly what you achieve, but that I should be proud of the fact that I'm even trying anything.
That you did it.
Right.
You did it.
And that's something that's really hard for me to keep remembering. You look, I think a lot of people summarize it or blame it on social media or whatever. I think even if social media didn't exist, comparison is a human thing.
It'll still be a thing, regardless.
It'll still be a thing.
Because even if social media didn't exist, people will look at things like magazines and newspapers. Like any kind of media outlet.
Yeah.
It's all media. You know, like even if like with the internet or newspapers, TV, right? People will look at any kind of media outlet, and unfortunately, we go through that habit of comparing ourselves to even the big stars that are on there. It's like, oh man, how did this person get on?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And or even if but at the same time too, like I think you hit the nail on the board when you talk about how real imposter syndrome is. We've all been through that, especially for us. Now we create content online on our YouTube channels, on our Instagram or TikTok pages, right? Or we stream on Twitch, whatever it may be. I remember even Billie Eilish said that in that one interview at the Zach Sang show. She said something like, but dude, why me? Like, why do you guys enjoy what I'm doing, right? And, but I feel like at the same time too, is that, well, the fact that, let's say, they asked you to play the Fort Langley night market, I feel like, if you ever like feel those days, maybe you had, you had a, like a one off night where it's just like, maybe we could have done better. Like, oh, this is so terrible, right? I always feel like, I would look at it, the bigger picture and say, you know what, the reason why they do ask you to play is because they trust you.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I kind of have a mental checklist on those nights where I'm just beating myself up. And I would say one of my strongest things to refer to is, okay, well, I may not be who I want to be or where I want to be yet.
Yeah.
But if they're still calling my phone, I'm doing something right that even I don't see.
Yeah.
So, I'm very grateful to that. I think that I need to find more self-confidence so that one day when the phone doesn't ring, I still have the courage to get back up and keep practicing, because there's going to be those times where, like, you're not getting any work and it has nothing to do with you, but if you're leaning on that to be your source of value, you're going to take it personally.
Exactly.
Right? And so I'm working on finding ways to just on my own be fine with it, but I think right now that's a great quick fix, is to cross-reference, oh, well, I got hired at XYZ, so I'm not as bad as that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And well, I like how the fact that you're diversifying yourself out there, right? So not only, let's say, not only did you stream on Instagram, right, but you also play with the band at the night market gigs or any other summer gigs that you think of, right? But then you got a chance to recently collaborate with our friend Danny Black at the Parks in Burnaby, right? And you're doing like a wide variety of stuff. And I think this is one of the things I think a lot of musicians, if they haven't gotten themselves a lot of work yet, right? I think that's one of the things to consider is like, just diversify a little bit. And just the fact that you were willing to take a chance on that, that says a lot. And I think that's going to help you along the way.
I really appreciate that. I think that for me started with who we actually ended up mutually meeting through was Sammy Gowie.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So he kind of took me under his wing in my senior year of high school.
That's right. Yeah.
We spent a lot of time. I actually did an internship at his company, and
at Fusion Presents, really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
So I was doing an internship that day when you guys were on a call, and then I happened to be sitting in the background. I was just waiting because we were doing some stuff before and after that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I was. I mentioned to you earlier today that I was doing some music get together type stuff in the city of Surrey, and through that I met Sammy, and I was like, I started taking these classes with Sammy. I was like a lost little puppy. So he'd be packing up at the end of the night, and I'd be standing there like, can I help you with anything? Can I help? Because when you find somebody who knows the things you want to know, and just like truly seems like a mover in this world and is involved, it's like, man, I want to be like that guy. So I need to, what can I do for him so that he can give me his time too,
Yeah.
So I started really helping out a lot with those events, and he was like, I can tell that you're just keen. Do you want to do this internship with me? So I wrote some papers for his company.
Right on.
I did some editing stuff in a video series that him and the team put out.
That's right.
And then I ended up meeting you through that. But his biggest advice to me is this idea, and I had heard it from other people, but it really sunk in when he said it. And I think even when you were talking to him about it, you guys were talking about that type of stuff, is this idea of like so many different income streams within music.
That's right. Yeah.
Are available. So get involved with them now.
It's true. Yeah. And if anything, you just create one if you need to.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And that's such a beautiful thing. And with the Danny stuff, man, I'm honestly blessed that she picks me, because she could pick anybody. She has many, many talented friends. And yeah, I'm just happy to be there.
But it circles back to it. I think it's the matter of trust, right? You have that trust that people will rely on you on, right? Which is great. And even like going back to when you were mentioning about Sammy, because what I've learned so much from him. Again, shout out to Sammy, by the way. Sammy Gowie is a great mentor, just so you guys know.
And like an actual genius.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, this guy like is the absolute. Like when you think about thinking outside the box, he's a prime example of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I've learned so much about him is Sammy, I hope you're okay with me sharing this, is that he feels that one of the most important things that we do as entertainers in general is, or just any job that you have, honestly, is to serve communities, right? And I really like how he mentioned that to me, because because he asked me one day, he said, what do you think, your purpose is as a musician, right? And I said, I used to think it's all about just entertaining, but I told him, like, I really feel like it's all about helping communities, right? Even with our local scene. And he said, no, exactly. He says, I think our purpose is actually to serve, right? And I'm like, yeah. Exactly that. I feel that same way too. But it's just knowing how Sammy has mentored so many different people too. Like he's got a big roster of different people. But it's a long list. But regardless, what they all have in common is that he was willing to empower these people, right? Give them the encouragement that they needed, and even helping them advance not just their musical skills, but even on the business side of things. I think that's really encouraging that he was willing to do that. But just knowing the fact that he was able to give you a chance to just help out in some capacity as well, I think that's great, because I think what Sammy sees through you is more than just a musician, right? You're not just Drew the musician. You're also Drew, the guy who can write stuff for them, who can or the very helpful guy who is not a useless bag of potatoes, you know what I mean? Because, which is great, because when someone asks you to help out somehow, it's like, well, it's because they trust you.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I would say that, that ties into the Danny thing too. The the Sammy stuff, a lot of the people that I've worked with, you know, I mentioned it earlier, but and I don't mean this in an insecure way. I mean it in a very logical, well thought through way.
Yeah.
I'm not the most proficient in my instrument. I'm not the most proficient vocalist. I'm not the most proficient songwriter.
Yeah.
But I want to be in rooms with people who are, so that I can learn what I can do to get better. And I'm not the guy who's going to say I knew how to do it all from day one.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing on day 1,000,000.
Right.
but I know that I really want to be there, and I want to try. And I believe that, and another Sammy quote, that there's no such thing as wasted effort.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you do something, something comes from it. You might not be able to know what that is yet, but something's going to come from it. And so
definitely.
For me to have these people, whether it be Danny, Sammy, any of the people that I've worked with in my life, who can look at me, you know, look at the product that I'm doing, you know, the songs that I'm putting out, and be able to look past that, you know, into, okay, well, this kid sits here now at 19, but if he keeps up at this rate, by the time he's 25, who knows what he'll be doing.
Exactly.
And to have people that kind of are essentially betting on me, like betting in my corner, you know, they are telling me, you know, you might not be where you want to be right now, but I see the direction. Yeah. And it's really hard because sometimes I don't see the direction. When people say that, like you said, that's so empowering. Like it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. When you mentioned that, you know, being in a room full of other people who's got some great skill level that we can learn from each other, you know, and that was the conversation Sammy and we had, you know, like, it's like, you know, it wasn't just like, you know, him, you know, like teaching us, you know, like some really amazing advice, right? But, you know, whenever he wanted to hear, let's say, you know, even let's say, you know, your point of view on things or my point of view on things too, he's learning that from us as well, which is what I find very encouraging. So because he's, you know, hey, by the way, we love you, Sammy. We really appreciate you, by the way.
Yeah.
So this next, you know, bit, you know, we're talking about you, man. Anyways, but with Sammy, I think what I like about him is that he not only is he a great leader, right, but he's also still willing to learn from other people in a way where he's going to get some good value on, you know, what from our experiences too, and you know, like what, you know, and I think that's what makes a really great solid person in anything in the music scene in general. You know, quite oftentimes, you know, when you see all these, you know, these other locals who are super talented, you know, we put them on, you know, on the pedestal like they're the final boss, basically.
Yeah. Oh man, I feel that.
Right. But at the same time, though, but then when you get to know some of these people who are super talented, but they're still like the nicest people you've ever met, it's just like, wow, yeah, it's very true, you know. Like, I just love the fact that they're still very down to earth, you know. They still, you know, they still have to, you know, like, you know, get out of bed and make breakfast, take the trash out, you know, and take the recyclables, and they're just like you and I, basically. But but I think the difference is that, you know, whereas like, you know, some celebrities, you know, they're like, you know, they're like you know, untouchable, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, but then you see other locals who are just super talented and you know, probably even more talented than some of those big stars today.
Fair.
You know, but I think what I enjoy about them just being, you know, local is the fact that, you know, they don't put themselves above everybody, which I really, really honestly admire.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've had so many, you know, as a huge music fan, I try very hard to reach out and connect with the people that I look up to.
Yeah.
And I've had so many positive experiences. I'm not even going to lie. And I know maybe it's just crazy chance.
Yeah.
Because I know, you know, the world's not perfect. Not everybody's going to have that experience.
No, of course not.
Every single person that I look up to that I've had the chance to meet has been exceptionally kind, especially on the smaller tiers of success. When they're successful, but they're just beginning to get successful. Yeah. When I find somebody who's a solid person, it makes me want to work even harder because, you know, imagine this. You work so hard every day to become, let's say, a label musician and get into the big rooms, and you get into the big rooms and everyone's a jerk. That sucks. And honestly, I'm afraid of that. But when I meet people who are signed to labels or playing big shows and they're super nice, number one, that makes me think that's who I want to be when I'm that. And number two, it makes me think, oh, I still actually want to be in those rooms because the people are actually really, really cool. Like, especially in our scene. Yeah. You know, I want to hang around those people. I'm not just chasing the idea of someone anymore. I now have met this person. at least enough to know that I actually really like hanging around this group of people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's very true. And I feel like, that when you're in a room full of all these, like, let's say, very solid people who are like really good influences at some capacity, it just motivates you to want to want to do better than what you did before.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
Absolutely.
And speaking of skills and all that too, let's talk about your songs. So My Girl is the one that keeps being stuck in my head for ages since this summer began, basically.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Is it the song of the summer?
Yeah. It's almost like it's like my summer song, basically.
There you go.
So it's on my playlist. And when you first wrote that song, was there someone that came to mind as your inspiration when you wrote that?
Oh man, do you mean musically or do you mean like
lyrically speaking?
Oh, yeah. Ooh. Yeah, so I wrote that in a time where, oh my goodness, it would have been like 2020.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 2021 when I would have wrote.
So during the pandemic,
we
basically.
were still pandemic.
Yeah.
So that's the context of the song that a lot of people who are listening to it now don't understand. I was kind of in between. I had just ended a relationship during the pandemic.
Right.
And I found a girl who I was head over heels for, and I'm still with pretty much 4 years later now, which is kind of crazy to say.
It's been quite some time now.
It's been quite some
Congratulations,
time.
man.
Thank you, because we're going into 2025 now, so that's coming up on 4 years for me.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, but I remember in both the previous relationship that I had and the current relationship that I was in, I kept facing these problems of having to think, am I frustrated at the person and the relationship right now? Or am I frustrated at the situation that if we could talk face to face, we could sort this out? Because during the pandemic, the breakup that happened was so messy because it had to be online because we couldn't see each other in person.
Oh my goodness.
Right? So you're thinking 2020, early 2021 maybe.
Yeah.
You break up and it's like it has to be over text because you're not allowed to see that person.
Oh my goodness.
It's crazy, right?
Yes.
And I was like late middle school, early high school, and so it's already messy. And then I get into this new relationship where I want to spend every day with this person, and COVID protocols are just starting to lift.
That's
so
right.
Maybe I'm allowed to spend one day every 2 weeks with this person. Like that's how my parents were. Whatever the deal was. And so, it's a very like happy-go-lucky sounding Beatles-esque, like kind of upbeat pop song about love, but the lyrics are saying over and over again in the chorus, thinking we could be everything if she was here with me. It's like, and the verses, even though it's a happy melody, are complaining the entire time.
Yeah,
and listing all the things that are going wrong. And you start to realize in the song, it's like, I'm not saying that any of those things are wrong with the relationship when you view it through the lens of, honestly, even just any type of long distance.
Yeah.
The idea of, calling each other at night and maybe one of you wakes up earlier than the other in the day. And so you can't really communicate right because your schedules aren't lining up.
That's right.
And, you just know that you guys could be great if you could just be in person and talk things out. That even though it's a silly pop song, that's what it was about for me.
It's almost like it's about the human connection, the importance of it.
Oh, absolutely. Because there's so much that there's just so much room for error in a relationship, which is relationships are already complicated. We don't need the whole barrier of technology to make it even more complicated.
Yeah, exactly. Genre-wise too, when I first heard that, like a few artists that came to mind when I first heard My Girl, I instantly thought of let's say the Eagles song "Take It Easy."
Oh, sick!
Right, that came to mind. But then, like it's of course, the late great Jimmy Buffett, who passed away earlier. I think was it last year or earlier this year, somewhere around there.
That's insane that you say that.
Yeah, because I think about that. It's like this sounds like that some I don't know, because like when I heard it, I'm like, this is like a great summer song. And then for some reason Jimmy Buffett came to mind, because I can imagine you playing that, let's say, if you wore like a Hawaiian shirt, or and the fact that you played it outdoors with the band this summer when I first saw you in person. I'm like, this is such a fitting summer song for some reason. Like summer fits that, it's the perfect season that fits that song. But then I also thought about those other classic rock songs, that like 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 the tambourines, the shakers, or like when you guys played it live, you had your buddy who did like the bongos and
Oh
all that
yeah,
stuff too,
that's
right?
Levi. Shout out to Levi. You the
Yeah,
goat.
Levi, yeah. So I thought that was just so cool. And like like when I hear like these chords, I'm just like, man, this is just so different, and yeah, and like the production is really awesome. But I gotta ask you though, like, so who was the producer behind that song?
Yeah, that's a producer named Zeph Park, who originally lived in, I don't know if it's North or South Carolina. We connected online.
No kidding.
I think he randomly followed me, and it was one of those times where he was moving from there to LA. Like, he's now like an LA producer.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
so as you can imagine, he's very busy.
Yes.
But basically, he reached out. I think he reached out to me, and then I checked out his stuff. I don't know. This is a long time ago, but we checked out each other's stuff, and we really connected on the fact that I was kind of getting tired of. I had worked with some producers. And this is no shade because I try and not speak badly of anybody, but who had really, I was probably, how old would I have been in 2021? I don't know, late teenage. I guess I'm still late teenage, but like middle to late teenage years.
Yeah.
And I was really tired of working. This is some teenage angst coming out. Tired of working with people who didn't really want to hear my ideas out fully. I was dealing with producers who would kind of say, yeah, but I have 30 years of experience on you, so you should do it this way. And
ouch.
Right. And although lots of that is true, like if I was telling them how to mix the song, I'd be wrong. I'll be honest. I don't know anything about that. But when it's like, oh, I want the guitar to play this melody instead of this melody, and they're arguing, no, play that melody. It's like, I'm paying X amount of money to record this song. You're not paying anything. You're getting paid. And you're telling me that my song isn't the way you like it. It's like, bro, come on. I'm literally paying you to record my song.
I feel like what makes a good producer is more, it should be more like this. It's like, okay. I remember someone I knew said it's like try on different clothes, basically, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like they say, hey, I want to wear a nice suit for this party. And it's like, okay, so here's a few different options, right? Okay, well, let's give this a try. Okay, if you didn't like it, okay, that's totally fine. We'll put it aside. Let's try something else that fits you. Okay, try this one on. Okay, I think this one might be better. But then you have every right to say, but could we add a little bit of some accessories to this,
Totally.
right? To the said suit. And so they're like, okay, well, let's do that. And in the end, it's your call because then they'll ask you, are you satisfied with this? And if you said yes, then cool, they've done their job. If you say no, could we try something else? Then they'll just have to be like, yeah, you know what? I got an idea. Let's go for this. Blah 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 blah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I was working with people where I wanted a suit and they wanted an astronaut. So
yes, exactly.
That's where we were. And the crazy thing is, it wasn't even that I was necessarily angry. I not at all. It was more that I felt uncomfortable to put my foot down because of my age, 13, 14, 15, to say anything. It's not even necessarily that I realized that they were wrong. Now looking back, they were maybe. But it was more just that I believed them. I was like, oh yeah, they're right. I'm stupid. I'm this old and they're this old. They must be right. Like I believed it immediately. Yeah. And then I would end up with songs that I didn't like. And I spent all of my savings of the summer or whatever, making the money from playing local coffee shops and stuff like that, pouring it all into a project that I did maybe like a 6 out of 10,
right.
And I was just, so when I started working with Zeph, he was a very young producer, probably 9-10 years older than me, and he was like, yeah, I'm moving to LA and I just want to do things my way. I have a sound in my head, and I really like your sound. And he sent me a bunch of references and he got it, and I liked his attitude, I'm not gonna lie.
Amazing.
Of being like, young guys can do it, it like there's so much truth to wisdom coming from experience and age, but there's also this raw beauty to inexperience and not being so rigid, being like, I think a lot of producers, as they get older, have a specific chain and a specific equipment that they'll always start the project with. And because it worked for the last 10 projects, not Zeph. He was like, you want to record this phone behind a fan and then send it through like, okay, I'm just making stuff up. But he was a lot more, there was a lot more revisions in the project. He wanted to try things and he really got the vision. And I don't think that production necessarily would work for all my songs, but for that specific song, I feel like I really hit the jackpot on who I worked with.
And it seems like he was really enthusiastic about your stuff too.
Absolutely, and that was a big thing. Is like, at a time when any artist is vulnerable, and it's hard to share your stuff, especially a young kid, and kind of having someone be like, I hear what you're doing. And I like that. Let's make something really good with it. Versus, I hear what you're doing. Change this, change this, change that. Like it's a different vibe.
I think like the main point of it is that you're supposed to enhance it.
Yeah,
you know?
And not go for something. And I think that the biggest thing is like, a lot of those producers would make a really good track with someone else. That doesn't mean that they're a bad producer.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because I remember working with different producers too who've, I'll tell you, all the ones I've worked with, thankfully, they've been really great folks. Like they enhanced what I had in mind, right? Even some of the stuff when I was working with on a Cry of Silence band that I'm in, right? But I think what also made these producers so great is just that, like they'll enhance what we've envisioned, right? What I had in mind. But at the same time, like they also know when to tell me when to tone things down just a little bit too. Totally. Because like sometimes I would be like, oh, look at all these guitar melodies, I want to put it in the said track, right? And then they're just like, whoa, hold on there, buddy. Let's slow down a little bit here. And they always bring some really good advice, like saying, you want people to hear the melody of your songs. Mm-hmm. Don't let all these different,
drown it out.
Yeah, that's right. Don't drown it out with all these different, little tidbits here and there, because then it's going to get overpowering, right? Yeah. And so when I had to learn all that stuff from them, I was just like, yeah, you know what? Like, I've learned so much about like the balance when it comes to production. It's like, okay, they want to make sure, I'm on track, but at the same time, they're still complementing our vision.
Totally.
Which is a great skill that every great producer should be having. Because I feel at the same time, even though they have the skills, like you said, they could have, the best equipment in the world and, the best session players to come in and all that stuff too. But I feel like the one thing that should be included is the people skills involved in it too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole other thing. Like just being able to truly, listen and understand someone's vision. I think it's so hard, especially when you're dealing with artists that are working on some of their earlier stuff where they don't necessarily speak the language that you do. And so they're asking you to essentially make it more insert random adjective that makes no sense. Yeah, like exactly. the artist is asking that, and then the producer has to figure it out. So even all the producers that I've worked with, even though I was earlier somewhat complaining about a specific situation, I mean, I think that that's an amazing skill that all of them somewhat had, is to decode that. Yeah. And yeah, I think that, it's really hard. The other thing that I recently learned from a producer I was working with, which I took away as probably my favorite advice, was like, take absolutely everything that you hear from anyone that you collaborate with a grain of salt, because maybe a producer will say it should be more like this. Consider that. Don't just throw it away. Because you never want to be the guy who's arrogant and is like, I know what's best all the time, because that's not true. Nobody knows what's best all the time.
Exactly.
So what you got to do is you got to hear them out, but also don't give up your idea right away. So you're doing a bit of both, where it's like when people tell you that something's great, maybe consider it being good and bad, like actually consider it. Yeah. And when people tell you something that's bad, don't just get defensive right away. Maybe it is bad. Maybe it is good. Like, so it's so weird when you're creating a subjective art is the craziest part.
But I feel like you have to find like the right people to give you the right feedback too.
Oh yeah, you don't just want a bunch of yes men to
this rocks. And you can't ask like your friends who are experts in fashion but they have no musical knowledge, right? Yeah. But I feel like that's one of the great things, at least now, in the community that we're in, right? Is that we're trying to get to know all these roster of different talents in our local scene, who have different knowledge that they have to offer that we can learn a lot from. and and as you mentioned about even the production side, I think there needs to be like that balance of like do these people can we trust you? It goes back to what we were saying. Can we trust these people, right? And I think that's the big circle, and I think that's the amazing thing about it. But speaking of production, if you had a chance to revisit one of your songs that you've released already, but let's say you want to record a live off the floor version of it, which one would you choose from your catalog?
Oh, that's so interesting because I think that all the ones from the earlier years, I often think about, okay, I made it to the extent that it could be then, but I could do it so much better now.
Yeah.
And now I've just kind of like, I used to like actually think about putting in money and time to do that. And now I'm like, well, why don't I just play it like how I want to change it with my band live? Right? Because just like you said earlier in our conversation, Colin James, right?
Yeah.
You were saying, everyone's saying, oh, you like his records? Wait until you hear him live. I would love to be that guy. It's like somebody might like my song, which I feel is only 70% complete, let's say. And when they go to hear me live, it has all the parts that they like from the recording, plus a bunch of extra stuff that I believe enhances it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cool idea. So I think I would leave a lot of the older tracks. I'd probably pick My Girl just because it's so fun to play with the band.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you ever want me involved in a live off the floor version, I would love to add like some other percussion instruments. That fish thingy.
The cuiro.
Is that
That's
what it's called?
pronounced.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was called. Yeah, I was always call it the fish thing. You know?
Or sometimes they're frogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost bought one of those at Long McQuaid, but for that show that you were coming to.
Yeah.
For Levi to play with. And dude, it was like $50. So I was like, no.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I'm not buying a little plastic fish for $50. I had to.
He can pay his own.
Yeah.
Well, so speaking of Levi, let's talk about your other bandmates that played with you. So let's talk about. Let's start off with first your lead guitar player. I thought he was super entertaining when I saw him live. He ran around to the crowd. So who is this gentleman?
Yeah. So. Just to give a bit of context first, the core 4-piece is the actual band from my college. We play everywhere together. It's me. I play rhythm guitar and vocals.
Yeah.
Sometimes keys, not at that show. Then we've got a bass player, lead guitar player, and drums. So that's the core band. Everyone else on stage that I'll talk about after are just really awesome buddies of mine who we were doing a big hometown show.
Yeah.
Literally where I went to high school, because I went to high school in Fort Langley.
That's right, yeah.
And I was like, let's get everyone on this. Let's get 8 people on the stage at the end of the night, and let's just vibe.
Full circle, yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to do that. And I think that, the trust thing that you were talking about earlier, those are people that I knew. It didn't matter what our musical capability necessarily was. I trusted that we were going to have a lot of fun with it.
Exactly.
And I trusted that they were going to bring a good vibe to that stage.
Yeah.
Because odds are I messed up a million times throughout the night. But it's all about having people that I can trust to basically just make it a party on stage. But anyways, that was just an intro to who the lead guitar player is.
Yeah.
The true party on stage. His name is Jaden Elness. Check him out on Instagram. He is one of my absolute best friends, if not my best friend right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he's him and I met at the class in Surrey. So the original class in Surrey was Band-Aid. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Yeah, so Band-Aid.
Yes.
Yeah. We went to that. My girlfriend's aunt was like, Drew, you should go to this thing. I saw a poster for it in Walgreens or something like that. I don't even think we have Walgreens here.
No,
we don't. That's right across the border. That's crazy. I was just making whatever, probably Shoppers Drug Mart, London Drugs, but it was one of those flyers that was like, come to this local event, right? And I'm not from Surrey, so I didn't see the flyer.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, I got to go to that. So I ended up meeting Sammy that day and Jaden that day.
Oh, no kidding.
I was wearing, funny enough that you mentioned it earlier, a total Hawaiian floral shirt. And Jaden came up to me, and now knowing, funny enough, is he was much more shy that day.
No kidding.
He was a very, very shy, like, killer player.
The same guy who ran into the crowd.
Literally over the last year, I don't know what's happened to that guy.
Oh my goodness.
I think that just playing a lot with us and just making sure that we do a lot of stuff before and after the show to make sure that the 4 of us feel comfortable to just be silly because we all take it too seriously sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions. Maybe we'll ask Jaden one day. Maybe I should get him on the show for his own episode.
That would be so sick.
Maybe I'm going to assume maybe because he got really comfortable playing with you guys.
I think that was the biggest thing, and I think that for him, I can't speak for him, but from what I've seen is just the more that we all hang out as friends, and the more comfortable we get around each other as people, it's almost like everybody's playing like air guitar of their instruments. Like we're just kind of screwing around trying to make each other laugh. There are times where I'm having a hard time on stage because I mess up and I'm mentally going through it, and I turn over and I see my guys just like joking around and making faces at me, and it changes the whole gig. It saves the gig, honestly.
It does, yeah.
And so yeah, I think that there's a lot of that. But when I met Jaden, I was wearing a goofy shirt, and I think that he could tell that I was just one of those guys who I think that both of us were kind of in a more like nerdy clique in high school, so to say. We were both like huge anime fans, but I don't mean we both are huge anime fans.
Still are today.
Gamers, wore bright, funky, funny shirts, stuff like that. Your classic. I don't even know what archetype of person, but that was both of us, and
pop culture fanatics, basically.
Thank you. That's exactly what it is, and we were very much drawn to each other that day. And we just hit it off, and then we started taking weekly classes that Sammy was running at the same space.
Yeah.
And so him and I got super close during that, and it was awesome. And then we both graduated.
Yeah.
He went to school out near Guildford.
Yeah.
And I went in Langley, and so we would only see each other once a week, basically, at that lesson.
Yeah,
and we would
right.
hang out a bunch. And we both graduated, and I hit him up. I'm like, hey, man, you're honestly one of the most talented musicians I know, and I've had a fun time like getting together and getting to know each other. What are you going to do with your life after school? Because I don't know. I'm not sure. And I had been applying to schools, but I didn't know 100%.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm going to go to Berklee College of Music. And I was like, okay, bro. Because he could. And,
wow.
And I knew he could. And he got in. And then when he got like how much it would cost, he went, no, I'm not going to that.
Oh my goodness.
So during all of that time of his auditioning and all that, and just being a genius like he is, I applied to Selkirk College, where I go now, in Nelson, which is 8 hours from Vancouver.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is a sister school of Berklee. So when you take your first, it's the only one in Western Canada. So when you take your first 2 years at Nelson, at Selkirk in Nelson, which I'm going into my second year, if I wanted to, I could then apply to Berklee, which I'm not probably going to, but at any point in my life I could after this, and skip the first 2 years at Berklee, because we've learned the exact same curriculum. So I would go into year 3 and 4 of Berklee.
Oh my goodness.
And then I could get my full degree there, which is super nice.
Wow.
Because at Berklee, it's like super expensive, super far away, tons of people. My school's super small, and we're learning the same things. I think that for going straight out of high school into a college, I don't think that there's a better experience than what I've gotten in terms of transition. It's been great.
And speaking of transition, with you adjusting being in Nelson because of school, have you checked out the local scene out there?
Dude, the local scene's awesome. I'm not even going to lie. It's like, I would say that we're one of the only pop rock bands. Like there's a huge punk scene, which is like,
yes,
it's crazy. True. It's crazy.
I've been to Nelson. Yeah, I believe that.
Dude,
yeah.
And it's awesome. And there's a lot of like jazz and shocking psychedelic type music.
Considering the demographic out there, but
yeah, exactly. But it's super cool. I love the scene. But basically, I got into that school, and then Jaden and I were talking, and he's like, I want to go to Berklee, but I cannot afford it at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, come to Selkirk. Then you can go to Berklee in later years, getting the first 2 years at Selkirk way cheaper.
Right on.
He said, oh, but the application window to Selkirk had closed just a couple days before that.
Yeah.
So he wasn't allowed to go to Selkirk. Basically, he wasn't allowed to apply for that year.
Right.
And so I sent him the dean's email that I got from my acceptance letter.
Oh.
And I said, send them a screenshot of your acceptance to Berklee.
Yeah.
And say, I would rather come to your school than Berklee, and they'll have to accept you. That was a total shot in the dark. Like, maybe they wouldn't.
Oh, okay.
But I was like, dude, just try it.
Yeah.
And he did it. And they were like, oh yeah, we always make room for like a couple of late special exceptions. And so he basically got a special non-audition like acceptance into the school.
How about that, eh?
He's a special, awesome guy.
That's brilliant. But speaking of that, I mean, so let's talk about your other bandmates who played with you.
Yeah.
So I mean, you mentioned your drummer. Like when I saw him play at that show, man, like that guy is just locked in with you guys, just like that. What's the one quality you admire about him besides his amazing skills?
Oh my goodness, outside of music?
Yeah.
I think that he is a very, very logical thinker.
Yeah.
He, there's times when, and Jaden's awesome, and Aaron's the other one who's in the band who plays bass.
That's right, yeah.
He's incredible as well. I'm sure we'll touch on him
Oh,
after.
we will. Yeah. Feel free to do so.
But like we have like a big gig coming up where we're headlining at, this video will come out later, so I can say it, but we're headlining at the Royal in Nelson, which is like the second biggest venue in Nelson. It's a bar.
I've been there. Yes.
Yeah?
It's amazing. Yeah.
So we just found out that like my project is headlining there, and they're asking us to pick the openers. And so, I appreciate Jaden and Aaron's perspectives a lot, but I know that I'm probably going to go with what Reed says in recommendations, because he really takes the time. Like, all of us are kind of, maybe not me, but sometimes we can all be a little bit impulsive in like our ideas, but Reed will think about every single angle about like what the best choice is to do. And he's just like, he's very smart. He was very like in high school, excelled in every single class where you have to basically think, like use like, I don't know if you subscribe to the left and right side of brain type thing, where it's like the creative half and the
logical half.
The logical half.
Yeah.
But his logical half is like jacked. I bet it has abs. Like his logical half is just like, he's so good at it. And so
that's amazing.
I admire that. And then, I mean, I could say this about all three of the guys, but just a super solid friend who will like just always has my back.
Yeah, and you mentioned your bassist, Aaron. You said, right? Yeah. So with Aaron, like he's, I can tell you guys have good chemistry together on the stage.
Yeah.
Like you've known each other for a long time, basically. So what's his good quality that makes him a great bandmate and friend?
I haven't even known him for that long. That's the craziest part.
Really?
He's the most recent. So
it just feels like you've known each other for that long. That's the thing. That's the sense I got from.
That's crazy because I mean, okay, all four of us spent, and I mean this, other than maybe a couple of weekends, we spent every single day from about 7 in the morning, maybe 8 in the morning, depending on when the classes started, 8 in the morning until 8 at night, the entire school year. And not because that's when our classes were. Yes, we had classes together, but we would then go to Aaron's house, which is across the street from our campus, and we would play in his basement until it was time to go.
Oh my goodness! And I know exactly what you're talking. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Totally. And and the four of us just kind of clicked. So Jaden I met in Surrey before. Reed I met when his other band was playing at Redgate in Vancouver.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I met him, and he's the one of the first people who told me about Selkirk.
Yeah.
So weird, just connection. That it's a crazy way that I ended up there. But Aaron, we met. Reed and I both actually passed the entrance exam on our instrument, and but we've both flunked the theory portion.
Oh,
and I mean,
ouch.
bad.
Ouch.
So, because I couldn't read music until college, I never learned how.
No way, really?
Yeah, I never learned. I had learned through tabs and chord charts and stuff like that, and I knew how to play chord progressions and theory wise how to the Nashville number system and stuff like that.
That's
I did not know how to read sheet music, and I still struggle with it. But so the prep course is what happens when you fail that but pass the other audition. You get put into this 2-week online course ahead of time,
right?
And if you pass that, then you get into the college.
Okay.
And so I guess, and I don't know how because he's pretty solid at it, but Aaron also failed the theory portion.
What?
And so the three of us were in this Zoom call, and he had a bunch of Beatles posters behind him and basses. And I'd already said to Reed and Jaden, I'm like, when we get to school, we're starting a band. We need to find a bass player. And this kid starts talking. And when you can just tell, like, from like 5 seconds of listening to someone speak, oh yeah, I could get along with that person.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those things. And I was like, so I hit him up. I looked at his name on Zoom, and then I looked up his Instagram. I was going crazy.
Stalking him on social media, yeah.
You wouldn't even believe my skills.
Man.
And I slid into his DMs. I'm like, yo, what type of music do you like? And we started talking for a long time. And then maybe the second day after I moved to Nelson, I went to his house and we just jammed some of my songs and some covers that he liked in his basement, and we hit it off from there. And he's an incredible artist and singer and songwriter in his own right, like completely outside of my project. He's great.
That's amazing. And speaking of people you could see getting along with, let's talk about the guy who was your guest saxophone player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
Roy.
because when you and Roy did the Bruce Springsteen song, I was just like, this, like, he made it sound exactly like the record.
Yes, he did. Yeah. So Roy and I went to the same high school.
Yeah.
The school that I went to is called Langley Fine Arts. It's in Fort Langley.
Yes,
and
that's
I
right.
went from the first grade to the last grade. So from
No
grade
way.
1 to 12.
Wow.
And I honestly, and he's going to kick me when I say this, I do not know what year he came in between 9 and 10.
Okay.
I know that he came in one of those years, but we just like didn't really hang out because I wasn't in the music program until the later years of high school.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was actually scared that I couldn't read music. So I never joined the music program. But when I did, we became closer friends. He's like outside of the friend group. I never talked to him because I'm a super extroverted person. Like I talk to everyone.
Yeah.
And he seemed kind of quiet, and I didn't want to like. I thought he kind of gave cool guy energy. Like, you know, the guy who has like the leg up against the locker and like leaning back. It was like he's so mysterious. I don't want to like. I don't want to be judged. He's the nicest guy I've ever met. And yet I was like, I don't want to be judged by this cool guy. And so, and he's, I mean, if you see him play and like, and yeah, I was so intimidated to say the least.
You're right.
But we became friends, especially in my last year of high school. And he was by far the best musician in our school.
That's amazing.
Like, absolutely. And I think that a lot of that comes down to his mental state of just being locked in. Like you said, like, I know for a fact he did not look up the notes to that song. He listened to the record and transcribed it by hand.
That's right.
And he listens to the exact articulation that the players play. His improv skills are insane, but his ability to like transcribe things, I would say, rivals it. And he's truly, if not the best, one of the best musicians, other than I'm sitting across from one right now.
Oh my goodness.
One of the best musicians I've ever met in my life, and I mean it so sincerely. So when I reached out to him, even though we're friends, we had never really worked together that much musically. I was scared. I'm like, he's gonna say no. Like, he's a real musician. That's how I felt. And he said yes immediately, and he showed up on time to every single rehearsal. And he stayed late. Like, he's a great dude. He's gonna be, if he chooses to, if he proceeds to do music, like we were talking about earlier about those session guys. Yeah, he could tour with anyone in the world, and I can confidently say that.
I would hire that guy in an instant. Right? Honestly, yeah. I'd be like, hey, I need a saxophone player, to do these songs, and he'll be like, yeah, I'll do it.
I'll give you his contact later.
Oh, for sure. For some reason, I just keep loving that show every time because I'm just like, it's just something about it. I think what it is that I felt, that the fact that you guys were so locked in together, right? And the fact that you guys had a great time with each other on stage, which is, really amazing. And what you were saying, the fact that you brought all these people from your high school as well to be your guest stars on that one too. It's like I said, it's like full circle, but it's almost like we've just saw a little bit of your biography on stage, basically.
Oh, dude, I love that. I mean, that's kind of what I wanted. Like, that performance for me, it was like, for a long time, I kept having the mindset of, when I come back from Nelson, I want everyone to see how much I've grown, and I want people to love this and no longer see me as the local guy who's trying to do music, but a solid music. Like, it became a toxic mindset where I was like, I'm gonna play it so perfect that everyone's gonna be like, wow, he's incredible. And I cracked halfway through the process of that. Like, mentally, I was like, that is, number one, that's just gross that I got it to that point. Like, it was crazy. Yeah. And then I was like, I just want to make this a love letter to good music and like having fun with my friends, because at the end of the day, I'm never gonna be perfect. Yeah. So let's just have fun.
Yeah, and it's almost like a love letter to your hometown too, basically.
Dude, totally. Yeah. I'm glad that translated, because it's like and I know it's such a cheesy thing to say, it was such an honor to be on stage. It was truly, truly an honor to be on stage with every single one of those guys that night.
Exactly. I felt that. Yeah.
I'm glad.
It was great. And speaking of other people, when it comes to the local scene, I mean, we talked about Danny Black already, who, of course, she's been a guest on the show. Yeah. We all know her. She's a friend of ours, really incredible artist and all that too. So thank you, Danny, for being a really cool performer and just a really cool person. So there you
Yeah,
go.
Danny.
Yeah, shouts to Danny. Is there anybody else in the music scene locally here in BC who you admire a lot?
Yeah, oh my goodness, there's so many. I mean, I said you already, so
Oh my goodness, thank you.
I won't go into this because if people are listening, they know who you are.
Yeah.
But they know how good you are. I have a lot of respect, especially after that open mic. I was like, damn, this is a guy who, and you mentioned it earlier, but really just wants to see the entire community thrive. And nobody succeeds unless they're given that chance to try things in a safe area. And if somebody doesn't make that safe area, then it doesn't exist. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. No, and you're most welcome. And just the fact that when we saw all those people at the Lamb Jam open mic nights last month, right? It's like, what I found so amazing is that when you see all these people from different levels, maybe not everyone's a virtuoso, but you can see the effort that these people have put in, which is great,
Absolutely.
and whether the songs make us, think, cry, laugh, whatever it may be. But I just love the fact that people have just put in the best effort possible, even if they're just beginners. I don't know. I think we all saw ourselves in those people too.
Yeah.
For those who are still learning, some of the students that were there too, right? Or even adults who are just new to, let's say, playing their instrument, playing guitar or piano. I just love the fact that, we can be supportive to these people. And, and they don't have to worry about, being laughed at or being humiliated or anything like that. But I feel like, when we see each other, with seeing you, seeing Danny, seeing Gavin and Brittany and all those, all those people perform at that stage, it's like, everyone's gonna get cheered, which I really liked about it.
Yeah.
It's like even if you didn't give it your best performance, it seems like everyone left that open mic pretty happy.
Absolutely, man.
At least I'm assuming that, but
Yeah, I remember I saw an interview somewhere, and I'm totally gonna blank on it because I consume way too much content in a day.
Hey, same here, man.
Yeah, right. That I forget what it was, but something someone had said was this idea of, forget the skill gap, forget any of that. Think about the idea of a human, a real live person showing up and bringing their unique touch that nobody else could replicate except for them. So, I may not be as good of a guitar player, vocalist, whatever as I want to be, but the fact that I showed up and shared my thing, or the fact that anybody else showed up and shared their thing, it's the fact that it's their thing that is so exclusive to them. It's so cool. I don't care if somebody sings out of tune and plays all the wrong chords the entire time. The fact that person showed up and you can see on everybody's face how much it means to anybody who gets the chance to perform.
Yeah.
And to understand, watching somebody, being an artist can often be super lonely. You feel like you have this deep connection to something that's invisible and doesn't exist.
That's right.
Art.
Yeah.
And we all know that feeling. So when you see that feeling on someone else's face, it validates that it's real,
Yeah.
Somebody's playing and you can see how much that song means to them. Whether you like the song or not, if you can take that connection that they're having with that moment and value that, you're golden for life.
That's true. Yeah, it's very, very true. From all the other shows that you've seen from other locals who perform, whether it be Danny or the people from the Lamb Jam open mic night or wherever else you've been to for the local shows, what's the one thing you've learned a lot from them?
Yeah. The thing that I've learned, actually, weirdly, the thing that I've learned is, in terms of trying to pursue being an artist, is keep showing up. Everybody thinks that it's the people who were born prodigies that succeed. It's often not. It's most of the time the people that succeed are the people that take the losses, shrug it off, and keep showing up. I've played a lot of gigs lately where I leave and I feel like, how did I just play that when 6 months ago I played a gig where I sounded way better? Am I regressing? Am I going back in skill? And, it freaks me out. But if I can just remember, there's going to be bad days. I just got to show up to the next one with a positive mindset and try again. It's like those are the people who win and become artists because, you you just keep showing up. It's not about being the best at all. It's about never quitting, even though it may seem insane to say that.
Yeah, and it's all about being present too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome. So one more question before we finish off here. We've been talking for almost an hour and a half, if you can believe it.
Oh my goodness.
It's been that long
Dude,
already.
it's been fun.
It's been amazing. No, and thank you so much for that. Thanks for coming to the show, by the way.
Of course.
But I want to finish off with this one final question. This is more like a fantasy booking here.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
So if you were to go to any concert in the world, and money's not an issue, right? You can take any flight you want or any road trip you want to go on. Is there any festival that you wish to go to?
One that exists, or am I making a fantasy lineup?
One that exists.
Okay. Ooh. I saw Weezer was playing this festival in Japan that's like I think it's the Fuji Festival or something.
Oh, really?
It's like Fuji Rock Festival or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like Mount Fuji, and it looked really cool because it was like Weezer and then a bunch of like cool J-rock bands that play some anime openings that I like. And I was like, okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's super random, but that's my answer. That's my answer right now.
That's a great answer. That's amazing. So Drew, thank you so much for being a part of the show, and I think we've hit the record of the longest episode. Actually,
oh my goodness,
this is great.
I hope that's okay.
No, this is incredible. You know, because I think for the last little while it was either Danny or one of my other guests, Sydney from Pop Punk Promo. Both of them were like over an hour as well.
Oh my goodness!
But you have broken this record as of today, in August 22nd, 2024.
I hope Danny hears I'm the record holder now.
Uh-oh.
She's got to come back for a second episode.
Oh, I know. Seriously. Yeah, but we'll have to chat for like much longer than that then. But honestly, Drew, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you so much. It's been great to get to know you and to see you play live, honestly, and the fact that we got to share the stage together at the open mic nights too. Yeah. And we hope to do shows together one day.
Dude, we'll be sharing many more stages. I know it.
It's going to happen for sure. So folks, make sure you follow the Drew Storey. And where can people find you online?
Yeah, so on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, all of that is just Drew Storey. And then my Instagram and I think TikTok handle are both the Drew Storey, because just Drew Storey was taken on both.
Oh my goodness, the audacity from that guy.
Know. Who is that?
Who's that other Drew Storey? Oh my goodness. All right. Anyways, Drew, thank you again so much, man. It's a pleasure having you on here. Thanks. And folks, make sure you give Drew a follow. He is a really incredible person, talented songwriter. Send him a message. He loves to connect with people, so make sure you do so. Okay, connect with Drew, and he will get back to you. And folks, we will see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Eddie Lam Show, a podcast dedicated to interviewing musicians and online content creators of every kind. If you would like to be a guest on the program, feel free to send me an email at eddielammusic@gmail.com. That's EDDIELAMmusic@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out my website at eddielammusic.ca. That's EDDIELAMmusic.ca. You can also follow me on social media. Username is Eddie Lam Music. That's EDDIELAM Music on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning into our program. In the meantime, stay in touch, stay safe, and as always, stay awesome.